The morning shift on Nexus Prime Station began like any other. Ships docked and departed. Traders argued over prices. Diplomats smiled their careful smiles. Among the thousands of beings walking the station corridors, humans moved with their usual energy, greeting friends from a dozen different species, stopping to help lost travelers, sharing food from there with curious aliens who had never tasted chocolate or coffee. Dr. Moore stood in Operating Room 7, her hands steady as she worked on her patient. The on her table had suffered internal injuries from a shuttle accident and had been in surgery for 3 hours already. Her team moved around her with practiced ease. A nurse handed her instruments. An assistant monitored vital signs. They worked together like they had done hundreds of times before. "Almost there," said softly. "Just need to close this last vessel and he will be stable." Across the galaxy, on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Starbound Hope, Admiral Daniel Cross reviewed the morning reports. His fleet of 12 ships patrolled the border regions, keeping peace between species who had once been enemies. It was quiet work most days, but Daniel never complained. Quiet meant no one was dying. "Coffee, Admiral?" his aide asked, holding out a steaming cup. Daniel smiled and took it. "You read my mind, son." On the Coalition Council, Ambassador Cole prepared for another day of negotiations. He adjusted his formal jacket and checked his notes one final time. Today's session would address trade disputes between the Collective and the Merchant Guild of boring work, perhaps, but important. Small problems became big problems if no one bothered to solve them. Stepped out of his quarters and walked toward the council chamber. Along the way, he passed a group of young students on a field trip. They waved at him excitedly. Humans were popular with children of every species. Something about the way humans smiled, perhaps, or the way they always seemed willing to stop and answer questions. Waved back. He remembered being that young once, full of wonder at the size of the universe. He was still thinking about those children when the feeling hit him. It came without warning. A strange sensation spread through his body, starting in his chest and moving outward. His skin tingled. His thoughts slowed. Somewhere deep in his mind, he heard something that was not quite a voice and not quite a sound. It was more like a pull, a gentle tug at the core of his being. Stopped walking. Around him, he noticed other humans had stopped too. A maintenance worker dropped his tools. A mother paused mid-step, her child's hand still in hers. A group of scientists stood frozen in the middle of a conversation. Every human in sight had the same expression on their face. Not fear, not pain, just a strange, distant look as if they were listening to something no one else could hear. Then their eyes began to glow. Soft golden light spilled from the eyes of every human being. It lasted only a moment, a heartbeat, a single breath, and then they were gone. Cole vanished from the corridor, leaving nothing behind but the faint echo of footsteps that would never reach their destination. In Operating Room 7, Dr. Moore disappeared between one heartbeat and the next. Her surgical tools clattered to the floor. The patient lay open on the table, the operation unfinished. The nurse screamed. On the bridge of the Starbound Hope, Admiral Daniel Cross vanished from his command chair. His coffee cup fell and shattered on the deck. The bridge crew stared at the empty chair in horror as alarms began to sound across every system. It happened everywhere. On Earth, 40 billion people disappeared in an instant. Cities fell silent. Cars crashed as drivers vanished behind the wheel. Aircraft tumbled from the sky. Hospitals lost their doctors mid-procedure. Schools emptied of teachers while alien exchange students watched in confusion. On 17 colony worlds, the same scene repeated. Farms, factories, homes, and offices suddenly stood empty. Human laughter, human voices, human presence erased from existence without a trace. No explosions, no weapons fire, no warning. One moment humanity existed, the next moment they were simply gone. The coalition communication networks overloaded within minutes. Panicked reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Leaders demanded answers that no one could provide. Military commanders activated emergency protocols for threats they could not identify. High Counselor of the Collective stood in the council chamber, surrounded by representatives of 100 species, all of them shouting over each other. His old heart beat painfully fast. In his 300 years of life, he had never seen anything like this. "Silence," he commanded, his deep voice cutting through the chaos. The chamber slowly quieted. "We must have order. We must investigate. Panic will not bring answers." But even as he spoke, felt a cold dread settling into his bones. He thought of Dr. Moore, who had saved his grandson's life 2 years ago. He thought of Admiral Cross, who had brokered peace between thee and the when war seemed certain. He thought of Ambassador Cole, who never failed to ask about his family before beginning any negotiation. Gone, all of them gone. A young aide rushed into the chamber, her face pale with shock. She carried an ancient data tablet, the kind used only for accessing the oldest archives. "High Counselor," she whispered, handing him the tablet. "We found something, a prophecy. It was sealed in the restricted archives for 10,000 years." Looked at the tablet. The text was in a language so old that translation software struggled with it, but certain words came through clearly. He read aloud. "When they are taken from the light, the darkness that took them shall face a darkness far greater." He looked up at the silent chamber. "What have we lost?" he asked quietly. "What have we truly lost?" No one could answer him, but deep in uncharted space, something ancient stirred. Something that had slept for millions of years. Something that felt, across the vast distances of the cosmos, the absence of children it had watched over since the first human drew breath on a small blue world circling an ordinary yellow star. The had been taken. And now, the universe would learn what happened when you stole children from beings older than stars. 3 months passed, and the galaxy changed in ways no one had predicted. High Counselor sat alone in his office, staring at reports he no longer had the energy to read. The numbers told a story of slow collapse. Trade routes that humans had negotiated fell apart as old grudges resurfaced. Medical stations struggled without human doctors, who had made up nearly 40% of the coalition's healthcare workers. Diplomatic missions failed one after another because no one knew how to bridge the gaps that humans had always bridged so naturally. And then there was the dominion of. There were predators in every sense of the word. For centuries, they had hungered to expand their empire, to consume weaker species, to dominate the galaxy. Only one thing had held them back: humans. Not through military might, but through diplomacy and alliances. Humans had woven together a web of treaties and friendships that made attacking any coalition member too costly to consider. Now that web had holes in it, and they were pushing through. Commander of the Defense Force stood before a tactical display, watching red markers spread across the map. 3 systems had fallen to thee in the past month alone. 2 more were under siege. The coalition response had been slow and uncoordinated. "We need the humans," his aide said quietly. "They're strategists, they're planners. Without them, we are fighting blind." Said nothing. He had reviewed the classified files. He knew the truth that most citizens did not. Human strategic advisors had designed nearly 70% of coalition defensive plans. They had seen patterns that others missed. They had predicted enemy movements with uncanny accuracy, and no one had bothered to learn how they did it. "We took them for granted," thought bitterly. "We smiled at their kindness and never asked what would happen if they were gone." Far from the front lines, on a small world called New Haven, a trader named walked through empty streets. She had come to collect goods from her human business partners. Instead, she found ghosts. The colony was perfectly preserved. Homes stood with doors unlocked. Gardens grew wild but alive. Automated systems still ran, keeping the lights on and the water flowing. But no humans walked these paths. No children played in these yards. No voices called out greetings from these windows. Stopped in front of a house she knew well. The Porter family had lived here. Greg and Porter and their 2 children, Sam and Daisy. They had welcomed into their home many times, shared meals with her, taught her to play human card games, and listened to her troubles when the trading life grew hard. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. Everything was as they had left it. Breakfast dishes sat on the table, half-finished meals now long rotted away. A child's drawing lay on the floor, showing 4 stick figures with smiling faces. And in the corner of the living room, curled up on a small bed, a dog lifted its head and looked at her. His heart broke. The animal was thin but alive. Automated feeders had kept it fed, barely. But it had been waiting here for 3 months, day after day, for a family that would never return. "Oh, little one," whispered, kneeling down. The dog came to her slowly, tail wagging with desperate hope. When it realized she was not its family, the tail stopped, but it still pressed against her, seeking any comfort it could find. Gathered the dog in her arms and wept. Across the galaxy, the assault on Prime began without warning. Warships descended on the peaceful trading world like wolves on sheep. The defense fleet fought bravely, but they were merchants, not warriors. Their ships were built for cargo, not combat. Distress calls went out to every coalition member. "Help us, please help us, anyone." The response was chaos. Commanders argued with admirals over who should lead the relief force. By the time they agreed on a plan, they had established a blockade. Millions were trapped on there, awaiting conquest. In his office, High Counselor received the news with heavy silence. He remembered Ambassador Cole warning him years ago that the coalition's unity was fragile. "We all have different histories," Cole had said. "Different fears, different pride. Someone needs to remind us that we are stronger together. Let us be those people, Counselor. Let humans do what we do best." Had agreed. He had relied on that human talent for bringing people together. And now, with the humans gone, the coalition was tearing itself apart. His aide entered with a new report. "Counselor, our translators have finished with the prophecy." Took the document and read the full text for the first time. In the age before memory, the firstborn walked among the stars. They were beings of light and thought, older than worlds, wiser than time. And when they chose to ascend, to leave behind the struggles of flesh, they did not abandon all bonds. They left behind children, young beings with short lives and bright spirits. The firstborn loved their children, though they could not stay. They watched from beyond, proud and patient, as their little ones grew and spread and learned to walk among other species. And they made one promise, written into the laws that governed their existence. "If ever the children are taken against their will, if ever they are stolen from the light, we will answer. No force in this universe or any other will protect those who harm our own. When they vanish, the firstborn will wake, and the darkness that stole them will learn that some bonds cannot be broken, not by time, not by death, not by all the power in creation." Lowered the document. His hands were trembling. At that moment, every sensor in the galaxy detected something impossible. A massive energy signature appeared in uncharted space, larger than any ship, any station, any weapon ever recorded. It moved toward coalition territory with purpose and speed. When analysts compared the signature to their databases, they found only one partial match. It came from human mythology files, sealed and classified under the category Ancestral Records. Something old was coming, and it was not happy. 6 months after the vanishing, the galaxy had learned to live with fear. The Dominion had conquered 12 systems. Refugee ships crowded every safe port. The coalition military was exhausted from constant defeats, and morale had collapsed to nothing. Species that had been allies for centuries now blamed each other for humanity's disappearance. Some whispered that they had betrayed the humans. Others accused thee of secret experiments. Trust rotted like fruit left in the sun. High Counselor worked 20 hours a day trying to hold everything together. He attended endless meetings, signed emergency orders, and gave speeches calling for unity. None of it seemed to make any difference. The coalition was dying, and he was too old and too tired to save it. Overlord celebrated his victories with a galaxy-wide broadcast. His face appeared on every screen. His voice boomed through every speaker. "Citizens of the coalition," he said, his sharp teeth gleaming in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Look at what you have become without your precious humans. Weak, divided, pathetic. The humans were never special. They were simply loud, and you were foolish enough to listen." He leaned forward, his dark eyes glittering with contempt. "Their disappearance proves what we always knew. Compassion is weakness. Kindness is foolishness. The strong survive. The weak vanish. This is the truth of the universe. Accept it, and perhaps we will show mercy when we conquer your worlds." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in silence. Many felt the cold grip of despair. The Overlord was right. Without the humans, what hope did they have? That night, everything changed. At exactly midnight, Coalition Standard Time, every communication device in the galaxy activated by itself. Screens that had been dark flickered to life. Speakers that had been silent crackled with static. Emergency channels, private networks, military frequencies, civilian broadcasts, all of them carried the same transmission. A voice spoke. It was not loud, but it filled every room it entered. It was calm, almost gentle, yet beneath that gentleness lay something vast and ancient and terribly cold. "Children of the Coalition, we have heard your cries, we have watched your struggles, and we have come." High Counselor stood frozen in his office, staring at his screen. The voice continued. "You know us by many names: gods, angels, spirits, ancestors. We are the firstborn, those who walked the stars before your species drew breath. Long ago, we ascended beyond flesh, beyond time, beyond the struggles that define mortal existence. But we did not forget where we came from." The voice paused. "We left behind children, young beings with short lives and bright hearts. Beings who chose to walk among you, to help you, to heal you, to stand beside you in your darkest moments. You called them humans." Across the galaxy, listeners held their breath. "Our children have been taken, stolen by an entity we call the Hollow, a predator that feeds on the emotions of sentient beings. The Hollow believed that humans, with their deep capacity for love and compassion, would make easy prey. It believed that their bonds to each other and to you would become chains of grief and despair." The gentleness left the voice. What remained was fury, ancient and absolute. The Hollow was wrong. A new image appeared on every screen. It showed a fleet of ships emerging from a rift in space. But these were not ships in any normal sense. They were made of light and shadow, of mathematics and memory, of materials that existed only in theory, and forces that mortal science could not explain. Each vessel was larger than a moon. There were hundreds of them. "We have rules," the voice continued. "Laws that have governed our existence since before your galaxies formed. We do not interfere in mortal affairs. We do not take sides in your wars. We do not answer prayers or grant wishes. These laws exist because we understand that our power, used carelessly, would destroy more than it saves." The fleet moved through Coalition space, passing planets and stations without stopping. Beings watched from windows and observation decks, witnessing something that their histories had never recorded. But there is one exception, one law that stands above all others. If our children are taken against their will, we answer, always, without mercy, without hesitation, without limit. The fleet approached the edge of territory. "To the Dominion, you have used our children's absence to wage war on innocence. You have mocked their memory. You have celebrated their disappearance. We will not punish you for this. Our children would not want us to. They believe in redemption, in second chances, in the possibility that even the beings can change. A pause. We are not our children. We are older and our patience is not infinite. Withdraw from all conquered territories. Release all prisoners. Return to your borders. You have one standard day to comply. On the Overlord watched the broadcast with growing rage. Threats, he snarled. Pretty lights and empty threats. Fire on those ships. Show these so-called ancestors that they fear nothing. His officers obeyed. 100 warships opened fire on the nearest vessel of light. The weapons hit their target. Nothing happened. The weapons simply passed through the ship, as if it were not entirely real, as if it existed in a space that technology could not touch. Then the ship responded. A single beam of light touched the fleet. 100 warships vanished, not destroyed, not damaged, vanished. Their crews found themselves standing on the surface of a nearby moon, confused but unharmed, their ship simply gone. The voice spoke one final time. We do not kill if we can avoid it. Our children taught us that, but do not mistake mercy for weakness. You have one day. Choose wisely. The broadcast ended. Silence fell across the galaxy. In his office, High Counselor sank into his chair. For the first time in 6 months, he allowed himself to feel something other than despair. Hope, terrible and wonderful and fragile as glass. The ancestors had come, and they were bringing their children home. Admiral Daniel Cross opened his eyes and saw nothing. Not darkness. Darkness was something. This was nothing. An endless gray void that stretched in every direction without horizon or boundary. He lay on a surface that felt solid but looked like mist. His last memory was the bridge of his ship, the strange feeling in his chest, the golden light, and then nothing until now. "Hello," he called out. His voice echoed strangely, as if the void itself was swallowing the sound. "Over here," someone answered. Daniel pushed himself to his feet and walked toward the voice. After what felt like hours but might have been minutes, he found others. Hundreds of them. Thousands. All humans, all waking from the same strange sleep, all looking around with the same confusion in their eyes. A woman approached him. She wore medical scrubs stained with something blue. "Admiral Cross, I am Dr. Moore. I was operating on a patient when this happened." Daniel nodded. "I was on my bridge. Do you know where we are?" "No, but more people keep appearing. Billions of us, I think, scattered across this place. We need to get organized." Daniel looked at her with respect. Most people would be panicking. She was already thinking about logistics. "What do you suggest?" he asked. "I have set up a medical station over that direction. Some people are waking up confused or hurt. We need to help them, and we need to find out what happened to us." They worked together, Daniel and gathering survivors and establishing order. Word spread through the void in whispers and shouts. Humans found each other, formed groups, shared information. Within hours, a rough organization had emerged. Medical stations for the wounded, assembly points for the lost, communication chains passing messages across vast distances. Ambassador Cole arrived at the central gathering point with news. He had been talking to people, piecing together fragments of memory. "Something took us," he reported. "I remember a presence in my mind just before we vanished. It was hungry. It wanted something from us." As if in answer, the void shifted. The gray mist pulled back, and something massive revealed itself. The hollow was not a creature in any normal sense. It was an absence, a hunger given form, a darkness that existed between the spaces where light could reach. It had no face, but somehow everyone knew it was watching them. "You were supposed to despair," the hollow said. Its voice was everywhere and nowhere, a whisper that crawled inside their skulls. "You were supposed to weep for your lost homes, your abandoned friends, your unfinished lives. Your grief was supposed to feed me for 1,000 years." It moved closer, and waves of cold sadness washed over the human crowd. People fell to their knees, clutching their heads as dark thoughts invaded their minds. "But you refuse to break," the hollow continued, confusion mixing with its anger. "You help each other, you comfort each other, you organize and plan and hope. Why, your situation is hopeless. You are trapped in my realm forever. There is no rescue, there is no escape." Daniel Cross stepped forward, fighting against the pressure in his mind. "You do not understand us at all, do you?" The hollow focused on him. "Explain." "You thought our compassion made us weak. You thought our love for others was a chain that would drag us into despair." Daniel looked back at the millions of humans standing behind him. Some were crying, some were scared, but none of them were alone. "Our compassion is not our weakness. It is why we survive. We carry each other when we cannot walk alone. We hold hope for each other when our own hope runs out. You could keep us here for eternity, and we would still find reasons to smile, because we would still have each other." The hollow laughed, a terrible sound like glass shattering in reverse. "Beautiful words, but words cannot free you. Nothing can free you. I am older than your species. I have consumed civilizations far greater than yours." A crack appeared in the gray sky. Light poured through, golden and warm, cutting through the void like a blade through shadow. The hollow screamed and pulled back. Through the crack stepped a being of pure radiance. It had a form that was almost human but not quite. It looked like a man, but its edges blurred into light, and its eyes contained depths that no mortal mind could fully process. "I am called the Shepherd," the being said, its voice gentle but filled with power that made the very void tremble. "I am one of the firstborn, and I have come for our children." The hollow recovered from its surprise and surged forward. "They are mine now. I took them fairly. They wandered into my traps. They are my prey." The shepherd looked at the hollow with something like pity. "You do not understand what you have done. These are not simply mortals. These are our children. The last gift we left to the universe before we ascended. We have watched them grow for millions of years. We have loved them across distances you cannot imagine." More cracks appeared in the sky. More light poured through. More shepherds stepped into the void. "You thought their compassion made them prey," the first shepherd continued. "You were wrong. Their compassion is why they survived when countless other species fell to despair and extinction. It is why they spread across the stars while others remained trapped on single worlds. It is why they built alliances while others built only enemies. It is the flame that we kindled in them when they were young, and it has never gone out." The hollow attacked. It threw its entire being at the shepherds, a wave of darkness and hunger that could have swallowed stars. The shepherds did not move, they simply shone brighter. Where the light touched the hollow, it burned away. Not destroyed, but unraveled, its ancient hungers dissolving like nightmares at dawn. "We do not kill if we can avoid it," the shepherd said. "Our children taught us that, but you will never feed again. You will spend eternity in a cage of light, contemplating what you tried to take from us." The hollow screamed as the shepherds bound it in chains of pure radiance. And then the first shepherd turned to the humans, to the 40 billion souls who had refused to give up hope even in the heart of darkness. "It is time to go home," the shepherd said, smiling. One by one, humans began to vanish from the void, returning to the exact places they had been taken from. Daniel Cross closed his eyes and felt the light wash over him. When he opened them again, he was standing on the bridge of his ship. His crew stared at him in shock. "Admiral," his aide whispered, "you have been gone for 7 months." Daniel looked at his hands. They were the same, but something inside him had changed. He had seen the face of his ancestors. He had witnessed power beyond comprehension, and he had learned beyond any doubt that humanity was never alone. "Get me a channel to Coalition Command," he said quietly. "Tell them we are back." Humans came back exactly as they had left. They appeared in operating rooms and ship bridges, in homes and offices, in the middle of streets and the corners of stations. 40 billion people, returning to a galaxy that had spent 7 months learning to miss them. On Nexus Prime, Dr. Moore materialized in Operating Room 7, the same operating room where she had vanished mid-surgery. Her team had long since finished the procedure without her, but someone had kept the room exactly as she had left it. A memorial, perhaps, or maybe just hope. She stood there for a moment looking at her hands. They remembered everything. The gray void, the hollow, the shepherds of light. It felt like a dream, but the clarity was too sharp for dreaming. Her communicator buzzed. A message from the station administrator asking all medical staff to report for duty. The galaxy had wounded who needed healing. Took a breath and walked out of the operating room. There was work to be done. On the Overlord watched his empire crumble. The Firstborn had given him 1 day to withdraw. He had refused, trusting in his military might. That had been a mistake. The Firstborn did not destroy his fleet. They simply moved it. Every warship in conquered territory vanished and reappeared in orbit around the weapons disabled, engines offline. The message was clear. Go home and stay there. When the humans returned, expected them to demand revenge. He expected punishment, humiliation, the complete subjugation of his people. That was what he would have done. Instead, Ambassador Cole sent him a simple message. The war is over. Let us talk about peace. Did not understand. His people had mocked humanity. They had celebrated their disappearance. They had conquered innocent worlds in their absence. Why were the humans offering forgiveness? He did not know how to answer that question. Perhaps he never would. On the Coalition Council, the Great Chamber filled with representatives from every member species. They had come to hear Ambassador Cole speak. They had come to learn what would happen next. Stood at the central podium, looking out at faces he had known for years. And 100 species who had built something together, something precious, something that had nearly fallen apart without humanity there to hold it. 7 months ago, began, we vanished without warning. We left behind unfinished surgeries and abandoned ships. We left behind friends who did not know if we were alive or dead. We left behind a galaxy that, frankly, needed us more than we ever realized. He paused. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that we are special. Every species in this room has gifts. Every species has contributed something unique to our coalition. But I will say this, humans have a talent for bringing people together. We see the best in others, even when they cannot see it in themselves. We build bridges when others build walls. And we never, ever give up on the idea that tomorrow can be better than today. He looked directly at the section, where High Counselor sat with tears in his old eyes. While we were gone, some of you searched for us. Some of you kept our pets fed and our gardens watered. Some of you refused to believe we were dead, even when all evidence suggested otherwise. For that, we thank you, not because we needed the help, but because it showed us something important. It showed us that the bonds we built were real, that the friendships we made were genuine, that when we called you family, you felt the same way about us. He straightened. We are home now, and we are not going anywhere. The Firstborn, our ancestors, have returned to wherever they go when they are not saving us from cosmic predators. But before they left, they gave us a message to share with all of you. The chamber fell silent. They said, our children chose to walk among you. They chose to help you, to heal you, to stand beside you in your darkest moments. That choice is sacred to us. Harm them again and understand that we will always answer. Let those words settle. But they also said something else. They said, our children love you, they believe in you. They see potential in you that you do not always see in yourselves. Honor that belief. Prove them right. Build something beautiful together. He stepped back from the podium. That is all I have to say. Thank you for welcoming us home. The chamber erupted in applause that lasted for 10 full minutes. Later that day, Admiral Daniel Cross visited High Counselor in his private office. The old looked exhausted, like a man who had carried an impossible weight for too long. It was hard, admitted. Harder than I knew anything could be. Every day I wondered if we would survive to the next. Every night I dreamed of your faces, all of you, the humans I have known and worked with and called friends. I was so afraid. Daniel sat down across from him, afraid of the coalition falling apart. No, met his eyes. Afraid of a galaxy without humans in it. Afraid of what we would become without you to remind us who we could be. Daniel reached out and placed his hand on the old counselor's shoulder. We are not going anywhere, he said. You are stuck with us. Laughed, a wet and broken sound, and for the first time in 7 months, he allowed himself to weep with relief. On Nexus Prime, Dr. Moore finished her shift and walked to the recovery ward. A familiar face waited for her, the she had been operating on when she vanished. He had survived, thanks to the other doctors who had finished her work. He stood up when he saw her, moving slowly, still healing. Dr. Moore, he said, you came back. I did, smiled. How are you feeling? Better, thanks to you, thanks to everyone, he hesitated. I heard what happened, about the firstborn, about everything. I do not understand all of it, but I understand one thing. What is that? You could have given up. In that dark place, trapped with no hope of rescue, you could have despaired, but you did not. You kept helping people even there. Why? Thought about the question. She remembered the gray void, the endless nothing, the weight of the hollow's hunger pressing down on them. And she remembered the faces of the people around her, the fear and the courage, the tears and the stubborn refusal to stop caring. Because that is who we are, she said. We are humans, we help. It is what we do. It is all we know how to do. The nodded slowly. Then I am glad you are back. The galaxy needs people who help. Smiled and walked away, ready for whatever came next. The humans returned to their posts, their homes, their families. They asked for no tribute, no apology, no recognition. They simply picked up where they had left off, helping and healing and hopping as they had always done. And the galaxy, for the first time in its long history, truly understood what it meant to be worthy of love.